Hi, welcome to Lessons from Starting Again. Somewhere along the line, I've got quite good at starting again. From many job changes throughout my late teens, early 20s, to moving house or relocating at what sometimes felt like the drop of a hat, starting again has become something that I've grown some or developed some skills around. It's always felt like for those life changes that I've really appreciated this ability. I'm quite a quick learner, so kind of picking up the new skills that are required for a new job has always been something that I've managed to find relatively easy. And in relation to moving and relocating, I've often found that I've kind of felt at home very quickly wherever I've moved to. Where starting again and again has become quite challenging would definitely be when it comes to exploring various hobbies or passions or considering any kind of creative projects that I want to pursue. For me, starting again has often been kind of tainted with some negative feelings in the past. I found that it can often feel like a bit of a failure. I've sometimes found myself quite consumed with feelings of, if I'd have just kept going when I started this before, then where would I be now? Which I'm very aware is not very productive thinking. It's not very helpful to have those thoughts. It won't get you anywhere thinking like that. And that can kind of spiral, so it can be, if I'd have carried on, I'd be here by now, or if I hadn't quit, then maybe I'd be finished with this by now. And when I kind of break down those thoughts, they serve very little purpose beyond demotivating me when it comes to starting again. It can be quite easy to kind of let yourself run off with that thought pattern and that way of thinking, and next thing you know, you're just kind of like 3-4 months down the line and you haven't started the thing that you wanted to start again. Something else that's happened for me quite a few times when I've restarted a project is that I've watched something on YouTube or I've listened to a podcast, and as I've been listening to it, I've thought, this feels really familiar. And it's because the previous time, and probably the time before that, when I started the project that I'm working on, I watched that same video, or I listened to that same podcast, or I read that same article. And I've found myself sometimes thinking, great, you read, listened, watched this ages ago, and you didn't do anything with it then, and you're just back watching it again. But quite often, when I take a step back in that situation, I will realise that I'm not the same person necessarily as I was when I watched that before, or I'm coming to it with new experiences, so I'm probably taking something different from it, which is me really putting a positive spin on that, but I do feel like it applies. I wrote a blog post on this topic, and when I was researching for this post, I saw this quote that said, "You're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience." Now, I think I actually don't know who said it. I saw it on Pinterest, so you know what it's like on there. But yeah, when I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, this resonates. This really resonates with me, because the project that I've been working on, and the blog that I've been working on, I came up with the idea for that in 2020. We are now in 2026. And I've only really got my head around it to a point where I can consistently write posts for it and kind of work towards getting an idea of, where I want it to go and what I want it to grow into now. But that's because I've started it over and over again multiple times over the past getting on for 6 years, and each time I've come to it with different experiences, different ways of thinking, different ways of learning, kind of more stuff that I've consumed that has resonated with me. It can be so easy to convince yourself that the conditions aren't right to start your project again. But the thing is that there will always be a reason why you can't start something, or you can't pick up where you left off with something. And I'm a massive perfectionist. I'm sure I'll talk about this more in many more videos because it comes up for me in a lot of ways in my life. But coming to terms with the fact that there won't be a perfect moment and whatever you share will not be perfect is something that you have to really just, I guess, detach from. That's like the only advice I would have on that, is like detach from the actual like thing itself that you're sharing. Because I can use an example of something that I did recently that made me have to have that mindset. I recently did a series on my Instagram and also TikTok, and actually it is on here too on YouTube. But I recently did a series, and this involved posting every single day. Now, I had never really posted before, and definitely not consistently, so it was terrifying. But having and also doing it with a perfectionist mindset was just like, I was dreading. I must admit, I was kind of dreading certain parts of it. But once I got into the rhythm of it and I really detached from the actual kind of final video that I clicked post on, so I would make it and, be enjoying the process of creating it and editing it. But once it came to actually pressing post, when I had it there drafted, I was just like, right, that's just something that I've spent some time on. Click post, right, it's gone. Okay, I need to film the next day. And I really detached from that final product. So you can be involved and attached to the process of creating whatever it is you're creating, but that final thing that you share with the world, or share with friends and family, or whatever you do with it, sending a manuscript off or something like that, once it's in that form, it's just a thing that's going somewhere. Like, you don't need to concern yourself with it anymore. And that's kind of the only thing that I could really do to, I guess, target my perfectionist tendencies. And to want something to be perfect, to want there to be a perfect element of some sort, I guess the perfect thing to do is to start. And that's even in like the smallest way. So it could be from something as crazy as like creating your whole website or batching up loads of like weeks worth of content, to reading an article that you've had on your list for ages that relates to something you want to write about. Or it could be just ordering a book that relates to what you want to do or what you want to learn. Because once you've started in some way, that's when you've really got the ball rolling. And once the ball is rolling, it gives you that chance to build momentum. And with momentum comes the opportunity for consistency. And then when you're consistently working at something, you start to kind of put down the small steps that actually increase to those big changes. So something that it is important to think about when it comes to starting again is whether it's kind of getting your head around whether it is the right time to start again, and whether that will kind of realign you, it will lead you towards building momentum to start reaching goals again, or whether it's just a bit of an excuse. And sometimes it is a case of just persevering. Sometimes it's a case of slightly pivoting just to kind of get things back on track again. And sometimes it is a case of starting again. But something I noticed when working on my blog project is that I started again with it so many times that it was just overwhelming. Like, every time I'd go to it, I wouldn't know where there was even like a solid foundation, because I was constantly adding ideas to it and considering different things, different views, different ways to do things every time I went to it. That to get started this time with properly launching it, getting the website sorted and just making a real plan for it, I almost had to just completely strip all of that away. So if, let's say, a few years ago when I was like, right, I'm going to really get started with it now, I had just persevered from there, then, you know, I probably wouldn't have had to have taken as many steps as I have recently to get it properly on track. But as I said at the beginning, it's not productive thinking. Another quote I came across when I was researching for this piece, and I am a bit of a sucker for a quote. I feel like I really shouldn't admit that, but I do love a good quote. It's, start simple, you can make it fancy later. And it's a really simple one. It's just, you know, it is what it says on the tin, but I just love it because for me, as I said, I'm a perfectionist. I want everything that I put out anywhere, whether that's just in conversation or it's at work or it's working on my projects or whatever it is. I always want it to be like, I don't know, it's not good. I've actually been reading a book about perfectionism for a long time. I'll have to, once I actually finally finish it, I'll have to share some more about that from, I'll do the book. But it's called The Perfectionist's Guide to Losing Control. And it's very good. But yeah, it's a little bit like every page you read, you're like, ooh, that's me. Oh God, that's me as well. Ooh, like it really kind of, it calls you out. But yeah, so start simple, you can make it fancy later. And as a perfectionist, having that mindset when you're doing something is, once it clicks with you, it's really good because you're kind of like, the option to make it fancy and perfect is still there. It's still there. You can, you know, add more to it as you go, but just getting that initial thing out there and almost like breaking the ice with yourself is so crucial to continuing with something, building that momentum, building that consistency, and the opportunities that come off the back of that. So that's it on starting again. And I thought it was quite interesting to have this as my first video on here because I haven't actually ever started a YouTube channel before. So I'm technically not starting a YouTube channel again, but who knows, maybe if I don't keep posting videos I can come back and watch this one and be like, oh yeah, I should probably carry on doing that. No, I just felt like for me it was quite an interesting topic to start on with, like sharing my blog posts, because that is something that I have started again on in many different ways. I've spoken in a few of my videos that I did as part of the 333 method, that series that I did. I spoke on there about how I was like a big Tumblr girl back in the day. I loved sharing on Tumblr, and that's obviously a form of blog. Same with MySpace, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess like blogging and sharing online in some way has been something that I have started again consistently. But yeah, so I don't know, having it on YouTube is maybe a bit like, but she hasn't started once. But yeah, I just feel like it's probably quite a good way to get to know me a bit on here and what I'm all about. But yeah, I feel like the topic itself it does really resonate with me, so just feels like a good place to start again. So I'll be sharing posts related to the things that I share on my blog every other week on here, and then every week I will have an episode coming up for a new series that I'm doing this year, which is called The Year of Actually Trying. And there'll be more on that in my next video.